I guess it was still funny as much as America spent trillions of dollars on the taxpayers' dollar. Being an American with your feet on the ground there was still made you kind of exotic. And I became a bit of the talk of the company, and then I then found other Americans that were there, and we had a reconnaissance team that was made up of Americans. And that was where I realized kind of where I was, that's where I realized where I had to go next. And that's where I kind of had to decide if I was going to stay here or not. Azov Battalion still has a lot of it's neo-Nazi presence. It still has a lot of its Nazi presence. I will say that because when I met these Americans, it was funny. I met these other Americans, and like I said, they're the recon team. They're the guys that have been doing the artillery spotting and the fucking intel gathering and all this. And so when I was told this by one of my Ukrainians, I was like, oh, these guys are gonna be kind of like maybe former Dev Guru or SEALs or Rangers, it's gonna be kind of neat. I felt a little better. And well, I walked in, and it was just a bunch of fucking cowboys, dude. A bunch of fucking cowboys that had no filter on their fucking mouth. It was hilarious. When I walked up to them, they're like, they saw me. It was funny. I'll call him Tex. This guy was from Texas. I'll call him Tex. Tex looked at me, and he's this dude with a fucking just about a fucking mohawk on his fucking head. He's got this big bushy Doc Holliday mustache and these googly eye trailer park glasses. It was hilarious, He looked like a caricature, dude.
Yeah.
And he looked up at me and he said, "Oh man, I don't want to say this word on this fucking show, dude." But he looked at me and he said that N-word. He's like, "Oh man, I thought we were gonna be given an N-word here for a second."
Shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just kind of looked at him. I was like, okay. I in my head, I was like, what the fuck? But I guess it kind of made sense to me more and more because it's war. No one gives a fuck what they say or do. And that's what's dangerous. I can attest to that. Well, I looked at him and I just kind of said, I'm like, oh, well, you got me instead. I said, my name's Justin. And I shook his head and he said, he called himself Tex, and then he introduced me to your guys, and there was one guy who stood out to me. He was their team medic. His name was Gustavo, not his real name, but I called him Doc. He was the team medic, Gustavo, and Gustavo I warmed up to very well. You have to find yourself a friend or a partner in war. You have to really actually. It's a double-edged blade. Like you have to attach yourself to somebody or other people, but you have to be ready to lose them. And so I attached myself to Gustavo, and he was funny. He said, ignore these fucking trailer trash hick fucking racists. We're just here to do a job." He said, he looked at his ex and he said, "If you keep fucking spewing your mouth like that, I'm not gonna patch you up."
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm gonna let you squirt out and die." And he's like, it was funny. Texas was like, "You're the only one that can make me squirt." I mean, these guys just had the dirtiest sense of humor, and I sort of began to have that too. And
fucking Russian, blah. Fucking Russian.
It's one of the bigger sub-units of Azov, but we were a Special Purpose Regiment. We were quote unquote special operations, and it turned out that around that time, mid-March, that our new job became that we were going to go help our guys at Mariupol. And so these guys, I will say this, it was funny, regardless of my battalion commander, my company commander being the Nazis that they were, because it was funny, I still get a kick out of this. I came in one day and we were going to watch they loved Ranger School. They fucking, it was funny. They started watching like Ranger School videos. They loved American Rangers and shit. These guys you have to realize these guys are like hyper fucking masculine. These guys are like fucking almost borderline insane in terms of like what, they're hyped up warriors, like they're these fucking gun ho guys. And so they kind of idolized the American special operations forces. They wanted to be like them for their countries. So we watched these old like History Channel Ranger School videos and stuff. And when my company commander opened up his laptop on 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 this huge fucking TV screen. He had a fucking desktop photo of fucking Adolf Hitler.
Jesus.
I know, and I was like, I just laughed my fucking ass off. I was like, holy shit, dude, this is happening.
And how prevalent is that? Because you hear absolutely, different reports coming down. Like how prevalent is it there, the Nazi nationalist rhetoric?
So it's funny. It's like a double-edged sword. When I got there, it's a double-edged sword with how much prevalence there is. For instance, it was like at that point in time, Azov did start out as just a more hardcore nationalist group, but nationalism attracts, fascism or national socialism or that sort of imagery, and that's kind of what they used it more so for, was imagery. Of course, they were within our ranks. We had a few street hooligans and a couple skinheads and some former political activists before the war, and I would say that for it, it probably started out pretty huge, and it was still kind of there, but it wasn't as much as it used to be. The guys who more just wanted to defend their country have more outweighed the guys who just want to be Nazis. But of course, people who probably watch this will be like, well, if there's Nazis, everyone's a Nazi. Why they're Nazis? And it's like, these guys, the history is so complicated there that as an American, you really just can't fucking almost touch it, right. Just because of like how much background there is as to why these guys are the way they are, why the country is the way their country is. But I'll give these guys credit that they were I can respect their hardcore nationalism. Could they use different imagery? Sure. Their usage of runes, no big deal to me, to be honest. Eastern Europe has a heavy Slavic pagan presence and background in legitimate history that's been verified by historians, archaeologists. It's there, So things like the rune, like, sometimes, I look at this and it doesn't really bug me too much, But it was I'd say they had more of an adaptation than an actual belief of National Socialist ideologies. But I did meet some guys that called themselves National Socialists, or they just called themselves street Nazis or whatever, and they were never these. I just sort of tolerated it. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. As long as you fight well, you fight well. If you fight with me, I'll fight with you. But fight for me, and I'll fight for you. But people can use that. Well, what if he was a pedophile? What if he was this? What if he was that? It's to say that out of term hypothetical.
Yeah. But you could also say that there was fantastic fighters in the Nazi regiments in the 40s.
That's what I mean. Yeah. I would say that's like, it's almost like the lesser of two evils. Would you rather have just a Nazi that's a normal guy but loves Hitler? Would you rather have this? So I sort of just came to a conclusion that I didn't really care. Sometimes I'd even joke around with these guys and sort of do the Sieg Heil sort of deal. Like, they look at me and they'd be like, Hail the Americani. And I'd be like, what's up, motherfucker?
Yeah.
Just to sort of fuck with them. It's funny. We did have this one guy who had actually moved to Israel and came back. It was funny. He had been he wasn't Israeli. He wasn't Israeli by heritage or anything like that. He just gone there, joined their military, whatever, came back. He was Ukrainian full and through. But this way, sometimes we fuck around with these guys. We do the little like Roman salute, and then they'd throw us the Roman salute, we'd throw them the Roman salute, and then we'd smack it down and go 9. You sort of just adapted to it because these are your guys. Like, I guess you could say that I sort of just accepted it because it was like, this is who I got left. I didn't have my family, I didn't have friends, I didn't have nothing. I just accepted this. I sort of embraced these guys. I mean, I'm Norse pagan myself. I got my tattoos of stuff like that. I got Tyr and Fenrir on my arm and stuff. I have those beliefs, but at the end of the day, I just sort of tolerated and accepted it because I'm like, these are the guys I'm fighting with. These guys, will fight and die for their country, but you know, it's whatever. As long as they fight. I want to make sure I'm not going to be the only guy running into that shit show, you know. And so, that was just sort of my view on it. Is it just didn't bug me, you know.
Yeah.
If anything, when you're in war, you sort of feel like you have a freedom, and that's free. That's a little dangerous, but at the same time, you feel like you have this freedom that you can now do some things that you never could do before. You can joke around and say some shit that everyone sort of thinks and wants to joke about. You can throw a Roman in a joking way. Like you can do his shit. You can fucking carry a gun around and like fucking high five a kid when you're all decked out in your gear and you got like a fucking pocket RPG. And pocket RPGs are good. It's a RPG round stuck in a fucking melt too, instead of having to carry around the fucking RPG on your full RPG on your back.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, like it's almost like you got this freedom, you know. And, and it felt good. It felt good. That was one thing that felt good. It was a camaraderie, you know. And I did at one point feel like a little bit of a hero. When we finally got our orders to support the Mariupol garrison in with Azov, we were my squad leader was then promoted to platoon leader after Hostomel and stuff, and he was going around asking within our platoon, we need volunteers. He said to me in broken English, he says, we need guys for Mariupol. Mariupol is shit right now. We need guys to go there. Let's go there to help. Do you want to go? And I was like, well, how? I said, well, yeah. I said, yeah, sure. No problem. Cool. You know, like, I still had my phone at that time, but I had switched to Ukrainian SIM card, but because of all the bombing and shelling, you know, your Wi-Fi is in and out. But anytime I actually had a connection, I had on my Telegram app of Moken, and you could see, you know, this is almost like a day's drive away from me. You could see like a day's drive away from me, you got guys who are fighting